Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 111, the missing key to better search rankings.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hey guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Small Biz Life. We're so excited that you have decided to join us this week. Mm-hmm. If you are a returning listener, thank you so much.
Yes.
And if you're new, thanks for checking us out.
Yay!
My name's Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
We are a husband and wife team of small business owners. I'm a CPA.
And I'm an IT professional.
And together, not only are we business owners, but we have 30 years of combined experience working with small businesses. Mm-hmm. So we are, super excited to be a resource for you, to help you walk this journey that we call the Small Biz Life, and hopefully to cut some of the crap off your to-do list, off that list of things you hate to do, so that you can focus on the things that are really important
to you.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And we're here today with Eric. He won't be making any sound.
No, he won't be making any sound. He's just here. He might be kicking every once in a while, but that's it. So I think one thing that a lot of small business owners are struggling with, and this is one, we get a lot of questions about this from my clients and from people we interact with, how do I get better search rankings?
And this is also something that I see all the time when I'm perusing Facebook groups. And a lot of times I'm just too frustrated to respond because I'll see people go, oh, I need some SEO optimization. And then you have several people say that they can do it. And I'm sure some of them can. Usually most of them can do parts of it because it's really, it's more than what you think. It's like you hear about page speed optimization, website optimization, SEO optimization. Really, it's all one thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the thing is really the goal of doing all this stuff is to get better search results. But I think a lot of times we think in terms of keywords and headings and headlines and what content we're writing. And we forget about this one part that is really important. And that's page speed.
Yes. And it's one where when people try and get started in it, if they're a do-it-yourself person, they get scared. They see bad things listed, and first you have to embrace the idea that you can't fix it all in a WordPress site. You're going to have third-party plugins. Sometimes things are off of the site. It's there's no way to get to 100% if you're using a CMS, especially one like WordPress, where you're using people's third-party add-ons to improve your site.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. What's a CMS?
Content management system.
Okay, thank you.
I should be careful because it could be a customer management system. There's a lot of CMSs, but in the case of websites, it's a content management system.
Okay, I might do that a lot this episode.
Well, it's funny. This is the second time we've recorded this one because the last time it was really way too technical, and so kind of one of the things that we did was we created a plugin. A checklist.
Because our people love checklists.
Our people love checklists. So if you go to smallbizlife.com/bonus, it would take you to a page where you can sign up and then download from the thank you page the actual checklist, and it will help you solve a lot of these the easier problems.
Yeah, and a lot of the things on the checklist are plugins that you should add to your site. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to worry about taking notes and trying to figure out what we're talking about. You can download that checklist at smallbizlife.com/bonus and get, be able to print it out and check things off as you get them on your site.
Yeah.
So what is an acceptable page speed?
For WordPress, I kind of look for under 2 seconds.
Okay.
And if a lot of it's preloaded, it will actually appear to load faster than it really does, which is even better. So like visually, when you click it open, do you have to sit there and go, is this page loading? If you like go to your page and do that and you can think, is this page loading? It's too long.
Mm-hmm. And so, and we'll put the link to this in the show notes, but how can somebody check their page speed?
You can go to the one people typically use is Google, one due to the search engine connection, but is Google page speed part of their Insight suites, but they've moved it around. It's on the developer site now, but you can still just put in your URL, push a button, and it will make you feel bad.
Yeah. So you can Google page speed. Or if you go to smallbizlife.com and click on the show notes for this episode, we'll put a link there.
And one other major caveat with it is if you do use what they call a content delivery network, a CDN, it does not take that into account.
Okay.
So it will actually register slower than it really is.
Okay. So what I hear you talk about CDNs all the time, and I know you're doing that work for people. What is a CDN?
So a CDN is a content delivery network, as I said. And the idea is WordPress, whenever someone asks for something, it goes to the database and it creates a copy natively of what they want to look at, and it delivers it to them. So there's a lot of pieces moving. And if there's slowness in any of those steps, it will add to the time. And then it will send it from wherever the server is to wherever the person is. What a CDN does is it creates copies of pages and it stores them all over the world. So if someone is in Texas, it'll look for what is the closest available node in the CDN and deliver just an already pre-generated copy. And it'll do stuff like it'll occasionally check to see if it needs to update. So it'll have some built-in features to make sure that like if you're adding a post that it'll actually show up when someone queries it, but or if they ask for something it doesn't have, it will go check and then it will cache it at that point. And they all work a little bit differently, but you can get it for free now with Cloudflare. So it's a pretty easy thing to do. And the thing is, even if you have a fast page, if you run your page speed from Sweden, it's going to probably be different speed than if you run it from LA.
Yeah.
If you only have like a hosting somewhere.
So kind of think of it this way, right? I kind of think of it as like Amazon, right? When Amazon first started, pretty much everything from Amazon shipped out of Seattle. Mm-hmm. And so it took a really long time. Like we live on the East Coast. It took a really long time to get stuff, right? Because it had to go from Seattle all the way to the East Coast. And then, but what Amazon started doing is they started building these fulfillment centers all over the country. And so they could now say, oh, okay, you want this book. Where's the closest place that we have this book to ship to you?
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, what a CDN does, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
okay.
That's a great way to think of it. Think of it as sort of a distribution network for your website.
Okay. So instead of being in one place, because that's where your servers are, it's all over the place.
That's right.
To make it easier. Okay, that's cool. So, and you said Cloudflare, that's what you're using, right?
That's what I use. It's typically integrates pretty easily with WordPress. And if you don't need a lot from it, it's free. So
okay, that's cool. I know we're using that with Kajabi to do some different things that we do, but we have a paid version.
I believe WordPress is also, or Garduel.com is also
in Cloudflare. Okay, that's cool. All right, so I just kind of wanted to do that because I know like CDN, that's a big thing. And I know like people are actually contacting you now to say, can you set this up for my site? So I kind of wanted to, I know that that's like an important part of what you do now. So, okay, cool. All right. So when you go into Google PageSpeed, it's going to give you a list of stuff to look at. And I know the first time I did this for one of our websites, I'm like, I don't even know what any of this stuff means. It all kind of sounds like gobbledygook. It doesn't really tell you how to fix them all.
It doesn't tell you how to fix any of them.
Right. Not in a language that I understand anyways. Like I could go to Jeff and say, hey, what does this mean that that I've got stuff above the fold? And he would go, oh, well, that's because there's code at the top of your website and you can actually use a plugin that will take all that code, which slows down your website, and put it at the bottom of your page so that all your content loads first. And I was like, oh, well, why couldn't it just say that? Right. So that's the one thing. not in language I understand, right? And not in language I think most people understand. And so that's the thing. So you could like look at one of these and go, okay, I have no idea what any of this stuff means or how to fix it.
And so that's the cool thing with the download. And it'll only be available for a limited time. So make sure you go and get it as soon as you hear it, because this is coming out
The end of October.
the end of October, the 30th, I believe. And so it could be up for a month, maybe a quarter.
Basically, it comes out until we have another idea that we think needs a checklist.
Exactly.
So
you might show up, but it might be too late. So as soon as you get this, go download the checklist.
it's smallbizlife.com/bonus.
And so what I do is I take some of those common error. I take general ones that will clean up a lot of things for you. And then I have a few more that will eliminate some of the most common errors I see. And then I also know from doing work with, the next level of search engine optimization, where I can generate a report saying, by priority, what are the problems on a website. What I did is I took some of the common ones that don't necessarily get fixed by those plugins, and I give some additional plugins ways to fix those as well too.
Okay, so let's talk about and these, I kind of agree with you that when I run this for websites, kind of the 4 things that you're going to see the most. One of them is going to be that your images are too big for the web.
Especially if you make them on your own. If you use something like GIMP or Photoshop and you're not a graphic designer, and so you're just generating images and saving them and uploading them to their website, they might look beautiful. I was actually just on a website today, and it literally was 2 pictures, a line of text. It probably took 3 seconds to load.
Wow.
I saw nothing else, not even links to other pages.
Now, mind you, we have 100 gigabit per second internet. So our internet is 4 times faster than what the average person has in their home if they have cable.
And I could see the 2 big images getting painted across the screen. And without even running it, I'm sitting there going, these images need to be compressed.
Right.
And so what you need to do is you need to optimize your images. The checklist, if you don't know how to do that, will tell you how to do that. The software themselves, if you use software like that, will automatically do it. If you use something like Get Stenciled to make your images in, they make them very small coming out of the box. So because they're designed to create digital graphics to go onto the web.
I love Stencil. It's a great plugin. So what, just in case like people, they miss the checklist, what plugin would they use to make their images smaller?
I use WP Smush.
Okay. And yeah, and that's actually really cool because it like scans your whole website and it'll actually do it. It'll actually go back and do historical when you first put it on your site.
I believe one time, unless you have the pro version.
Yeah. And then it'll do your post as you're posting them.
Yeah. And it's been a while since I installed one, so I don't know, because there's a pro version out there now. But it's very solid. It will optimize all your images. Now, the thing is, you're going to install this and you might still see, but it says I need to optimize images. It's very important. You go into the detail, you look, it'll show you a list of everything that's flawed according to it. And a lot of times when you have a plugin, let's say like you have a AppSumo, you have the, what do they call it? The Sumo Me software. They have JavaScript that is not at your domain. They have images that get fed into your domain when you add the plugin. You can't fix things that aren't on your domain.
Right. So that's the thing. So don't freak out because the thing is still showing up. You're looking for it to get better.
Yeah. And what you're looking for is when you go look at the detail for optimized images, you see nothing that starts off with your domain name. So it won't say, like for us, it wouldn't say smallbizlife.com/something.
Right. It might, if it says like appsumo.com/something, then you know that that's not from you. That's from the plugin that you're using.
It's from the plugin you're using.
Okay. So the next one, so number 2, so the first one is optimizing your images, because if they're too big, they're going to take forever to load. And then the second one, and so let me see if I understand this correctly. So your website is basically a puzzle, right? Of all of these different pieces, and they all have to load separately.
Exactly.
typically with a website.
So it's like most WordPress sites, or I would assume all of them, they go to the database whenever you go to a page. They have what they call cascading style sheets, which help your theme display when someone looks at your web page. Those are also linked to your web page. They have JavaScript that helps do functionality that you couldn't do natively in HTML, which feels natural on the keyboard, but it's more links into your web page. And so all of these things have to get pulled in together. And when it finds it, a browser reads top to bottom, left to right, like a human does. It's not super efficient at reading. So when it comes across these things, it has to load them in.
And the thing is too, and it all depends too on where the code is.
Mm-hmm.
So like it could, so it might, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do your header first and then the content as it's going down the page. It might do your header and then your sidebar and the widgets in your sidebar.
It all depends
on how the code is displayed.
If you go to your web page and want to hurt your brain, right click and click on view page source, or it'll be named very similar to that. And that will show you exactly how it's reading your page.
Right. So that's the thing. So when we say top to bottom, left to right, we don't mean the display of the page. We mean the code on the page. And so, so for it to load all of these different lines of code and all these different components, sometimes that can slow down your site. So there's something called caching, which, let me see, hopefully I get this right, that will take almost like a photo of what your page is supposed to look like so it can load it faster.
But close enough.
But it makes like a copy.
But essentially what it does is that code that you see when you do page view source is not what really exists. So it generates that on the server and serves it up. That's why a server is called server. So essentially what it does is it creates the code and then just delivers the code directly, and it doesn't have to do all of the processing to get the code.
Right. So that's why sometimes when you update your website and you don't see the changes right away, sometimes it's because you have caching that has not updated.
And most caching programs will have a button, typically on the outside in the black WordPress bar when you're logged in, that will say clear caching or purge cache.
Right. Now, so with caching, and you want to have a plugin for this, but this is the one where it's really server dependent, right? Like it really depends on the hosting you have.
The actual plugins for server caching, that's true, because there's a couple different versions of caching. One's called server caching, and that's what we're talking about right now. And that's very host dependent. Unless you know exactly what you're doing, go to your host and find out which one they recommend, and they'll typically have a sheet, like a page in their help documents showing you what settings to set, because some of these have lots of different settings. A lot of them you might not even understand what they mean, and if you typically follow the instructions that your host gives you, it's typically very easy to set up. But sometimes if you don't have those instructions, it can be complicated because maybe you're trying to enact features that their servers won't let you do because of security, and it can cause problems. So
this is why you want to have a host that has good customer service.
Good customer service, good help content. And a lot of times most hosts with good customer service will help you through that process if you're struggling.
Because I know when we moved from HostGator to HostM, we actually had to change the caching plugin we used.
Yeah, if you see, we used to use HostGator, and so I have theirs listed, and we also use HostM, and I have theirs listed. But if you don't use one of those two, if you use the checklist, go to your host and figure out which one they recommend and use the settings that they tell you to recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. So that one is really dependent on who you're using for hosting.
Yeah.
The next one, and I see this on the back of Accounting in Focus, but I don't really know what it does. Lazy load.
Lazy load, and there are lots of ways. I don't suggest plugins for this because some themes deal with this natively. You can get it into your website pretty easily. So
it's built into the theme for Accounting in Focus, I think.
I believe so. I don't remember. There are plugins if your theme doesn't have it. And it might even be WordPress core now. I forget, but I don't really suggest any specifically. But the idea is when you get an image, if you tell it to lazy load, it'll load it kind of in the background, but it'll try and get the text out first. So you can take your widgets, you can take images and say lazy load these things. That way the page looks like it comes up faster to the human eye than what it officially does computer wise.
Okay. So that kind of gives priority to the text, right? Which is what most people are looking for. Okay, that makes sense. And then this is the one, and we kind of talked about this one before, you might see, scripts to footer, right? That you need to put scripts to footer.
Well, that's the name of the plugin. That's where it says above the fold content. That really just means that when you see the screen, when you first load it up, that's what they call above the fold in web terms.
It's kind of like, it came from newspapers, right? So when you used to have a newspaper and you fold it in half, stories that were more important were on the top half of the page, because when people grabbed a newspaper, that's what sold
They would
the
see
newspaper.
what was above the fold.
Right. And so when websites came through, that also translated to websites. Whatever natively displays on the screen when it comes up, that's called above the fold.
Yeah. And most web pages, home pages, are larger than a screen, especially like on a phone. So it's a very important thing. There's a plugin, once again, it's in the checklist that moves the scripts to the footer. And you usually need one. If you have a lot of plugins, you might have to exclude certain things. I haven't run into that, but it's definitely a possibility. You need a plugin that will allow you the possibility to exclude scripts, because sometimes they'll break.
So, and the plugin it used for that is called scripts to footer. Okay. And again, that's on the checklist if you go get the checklist. Okay. So so those are the big four, right? The big four: optimizing your images, having a caching plugin, using lazy load, and moving scripts down, further down the page. Okay. So a couple things that most people forget to check for.
Yeah.
And this is one that I use a lot.
Or it might not always be important.
Might not always be important. But I think now, one of the things we talk about a lot on the show is having evergreen content, right? And the problem is we're kind of trained that when you get a search result, if there's a date in that search result, you go, oh, well, that's 4 years old. Oh, that's 3 years old. And we kind of disregard it.
Google does that.
And Google does that as well.
If you say this post was from 2013 and there's another post, we'll say equivalent in SEO terms, that's from 2014, it's going to display the 2014 one before the 2013 one if Google can, if it fits into the Google algorithm, because it's newer.
So one of the things that really helps Accounting in Focus, right, and that's our site that gets about 100,000 visitors a month, we removed the dates from all of the WordPress posts.
Yep. And a lot of themes now, it's built in where you don't have to display it. You can just go into your theme settings and turn it off. There are plugins that will allow you to turn off the theme. And there are probably some that will allow you to choose by post whether or not you want it to display a publishing date.
So that's the thing. So if you're writing content that you want to be evergreen, it's always going to be relevant. You're going to want to remove dates from your blog.
Especially if you're in the habit of reposting content to where, let's say you have 100 good articles on a blog that you used to try and drive traffic to somewhere else. And once a month, you take the last one that was published and republish it, which makes it pop up new in the feed. And it makes it look like there's still activity, which is a strategy some people do use. If you have a date there, it's going to look silly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to want to, and if it's not built into your WordPress site, then there are plugins that you can get for that as well. And then, so there's another one you've got listed here that says far future expiration.
Yeah. And this is one that it gives you the exact terminology you're looking for, but it's one of the one-off ones that's sometimes hard to fix if you don't know what you're doing. But the idea is whenever there's something called browser caching. So the browser is the local computer or phone will store resources from the website. So if it goes back, it will load faster. Which is why sometimes when you have a problem with the website, they tell you to clear cache, because there might be something bad in there that they're trying to make sure is deleted. And so what happens is if you have a really short expiration time, and say they go back like an hour later, they might have to re-download that resource again. So it helps save your server, make your server go faster, if they don't do that. And it tells Google that it's a little bit more relevant because Google will notice the expiration date. So it'd say, oh, this is a longer lasting thing. So you can get a plugin, and I forget the name of it. And it's actually, that might actually be the name of it, the Far Future Expiration plugin.
It's on the checklist.
It's on the checklist. And but it will actually, anything on your site that doesn't have, once again, it won't take care of those things that aren't on your domain, but the things that are off your domain, it will add in an expiration date to help clean that up the best you can.
Okay, so you talk about like database problems, right? And I've seen this with databases, that databases, they get yucky and they get slow.
Well, the thing people don't realize is WordPress is primarily a database. Everything, your links, your text, your comments, everything is stored in a database. There are no pages that look like web pages natively in a WordPress site. So what happens is whenever you go to a post, whenever you go to a page, it creates it, which one of the reasons why we cache is to avoid having to go back and forth to the database. The problem is over time, your database will get clogged up with old stuff. Things will it gets messy in there. And this is probably the single biggest thing that slows down WordPress sites. I've seen WordPress sites that had perfect image optimization. They were cached. They had their scripts below the fold, and they still had like 6-7 second page speeds. And the problem was they had enough content that over time it just got gummed up. And the other problem is too, whenever you make changes in WordPress, it also will keep not only what you currently have, but the revisions. And sometimes you can go back an infinite number of revisions. Some themes limit this, some don't.
Isn't there a plugin that you can get that will limit the number of revisions that it actually keeps?
Revision control.
Okay.
And you can get another plugin. I use WP, I think it's called WP Database. It's in the checklist, the actual name. And that actually, you can not only go through and clean up your WordPress site, it will actually schedule it to back it up. It will email it to you, or there's a few other things that it can do that you can set up when you set it up. You definitely want a tutorial on how to set this up if you don't know how. And you definitely want to back up before you set this up in case you screw something up really bad, because you're messing with the database, which is the heart of all of your data.
Right.
So make sure before you do this one, especially, to back up your database. I typically recommend people back up their site every time before they add a new plugin in case it really screws up their website. But if you only do it for one, make it this one. And the good news is, if you follow a good tutorial, you get it set up once, it will automatically every month or every time period you tell it to clean up your database.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Now, okay, so the next thing you say is cornerstone content.
And that's sort of a newer way for websites to address SEO keywords. Because a lot of times what a lot of us smaller businesses have to do is we can't compete for small business. Chris and I probably aren't going to ever own the SEO rights on small business. But now if we create a post that is about small business, explaining what it is, make it a well-referenced, one of those perfect SEO 1,200 word plus articles. And we, in our SEO Yoast, we say, hey, this is the small business is the keyword, and, it gets that little green thing, and we're like, yay, it's perfectly SEO'd. You get all those wonderful things in place. What you can do, especially in SEO Yoast, you can just mark it as your cornerstone content. And then what you want to do is when you talk about the concepts, you can actually create links back to that page. And those internal links will help build up the authority of that page inside of your domain, which will help the search engine go, well, if I'm going to this domain, this is the page I need to go to for small business. It'll help make it more relevant outside of your domain as well, too.
And isn't there like a plugin that you can use, or is it built in that it'll automatically do that for you? If you say this is the post for assets.
I added one a while ago called Linkify Text. And essentially there's a screen where you say this word, whenever this word shows up, and you can say it the first time on a page or every time on a page, point it towards point it towards this one page. So I don't have to remember to add the link whenever I add a new keyword in. But also as a benefit, if it's something close to that, where it's not exactly the same, still create links from those. You have to do those on your own, unless you can think them up and add them into this other plugin. But the more links, when you talk about it, either exact or meaning the same thing, whenever they point back to the same page, it really helps Google say, this is the important page. This is a great page for this.
Right. So if that's something that, you're really trying to like get authority for, a certain term or some terms, the more links that you have on your blog posts that go back to another post, right? So, this is the post that really talks about small business. That tells Google that this is more important.
Yeah. And typically on most of your posts, you're going to have more what they call the short phrase SEO, where you're trying to get towards a phrase like, say, how do I do this in small business? Or how do I do that in small business? It's something that adds more words to it and will have a smaller audience, but is a less competitive area. And so those are going to be most of your pages, but then you're going to have like maybe, 5 to 10 cornerstone pieces of content that are those really hard, high-end ones that you are trying to get internal links back to. And you actually ultimately want to get external links pointing back to them as well.
Yeah, and we have some of those on Accounting and Focus. Like there are a couple, cornerstone posts that are about major topics in accounting that get a lot of traffic. And those, if I use that term somewhere else on the website, we always make sure to link back to that main content. Yeah. So it's a good thing to do. Okay, so let's see. All right, so we're going to kind of quickly go through some other things that are important to fix. Okay.
Look, these are sort of, there's a higher end like search result reports that can be run on websites. And there's certain types of errors that will cause you more SEO harm than others. And so for some of the ones we didn't talk about, here are some things that you want to keep in mind for your page. One is missing meta descriptions or non-SEO titles or duplicate titles. All of those things will confuse Google. So you want to try and eliminate those the best you can as well too. SEO Yoast does a great job on all that kind of stuff. 404 errors. And there's a link, and I don't remember the name of the plugin itself, but there are plugins that will do this that will help identify what they call 404 errors. And that's where maybe you changed the name of a post several months afterwards and you forgot there were links to it. And so now those old links are now broken. It will help find those broken links for you, and then you can fix them.
It isn't broken links in general, like that's something that really hurts your page.
Yeah, because if the search engine tries to go through and it hits a 404 link, I believe it will bounce from your site. Or if it hits so many, it's an algorithm thing I don't completely understand. But yes, 404 errors. Essentially, what happens is a spider will go through your page. When it gets to a link, it will try and go through the link if it does not say do not follow. And if it goes through and there's nothing there, it hurts your trustworthiness to Google.
Okay. All right. Redirecting to the secure, the HTTPS version of your site.
Without getting into too much detail here, the idea is if you have an SSL certificate on your site and someone types in www.yourwebsite.com and it does not go to the HTTPS, it hurts you in SEO searches. And now, especially on pages where people have to like log in, like let's say you have a site they have to log in to comment on your blog. Those login pages, if they're not secure now, you'll actually get like a scary screen that says this page is not secure. So at this point, if you have SSL, you don't do advertising, you want to get redirects set up.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And I think, is Google there yet with the ad portion of?
Not that I've heard.
Okay. All right. And that's something you got to kind of check. Like if you do have ads on your website and they're not AdSense, you might want to check with the company that you're working with your ads and say, hey, listen, if I put an SSL certificate on my site, are your ads going to work okay?
Yep.
Because I know that's still an issue with AdSense. Okay. Image optimization for desktop.
It just means your images aren't optimized and you have different copies of it. And so if I'm on the desktop of your website, that image is not optimized.
Okay.
So that's just a different type of, especially in the age of responsive websites where maybe your mobile is great, but the desktop version's bad.
Okay. Image, duplicate titles, all errors.
So that goes back to the idea where you have these duplicate titles and there are multiple reasons that these can happen on your site, but if the title of the webpage and when you log in, you'll see it in the top of the browser. If that's the same, like say I have an archives page in WordPress, and so if I go there and it always says archives, but there's 5 different ways to get to it, that's going to cause confusion to the server. If I happen to have 500 posts and 2 of them have the same name, that's really bad. Mm-hmm. It's easy to fix those kind of issues. SEO Yoast there.
Okay. Above the fold content for mobile.
Mm-hmm. And once again, that's a similar issue as it is overall, but it just means that what you can see on the screen of your phone is above the fold. Your scripts to footer should fix that one as well too.
Okay, so I have a question, right? Because there's a couple more of these, but how do people find out that these are problems?
Because when you either get a SERP report or you go to something like Google Insights page speed, you will actually, these will be the things that it tells you.
Okay, so it will actually tell you that these things are problems. Mm-hmm. But then okay, so how do you fix them though?
You basically go get the checklist and start installing the plugins.
Okay.
And we'll fix most of these. Some of these are theme fixes, like H1 headings. You need one H1 heading per page for Google.
And that's like the title, right? Typically, the title is
should
programmed.
be an H1 in your theme. If it's not, get someone to update it or update it yourself. But that needs to be an H1 heading. All your other headings should be H2 for major subheadings, and then if they have subheadings, H3.
And so that's okay. And I know for when I first learned about this, I was trying to figure out how you do this. So for H2 and below, right? And these are heading size in your blog posts. There's a drop down. And if you're in typically, if you're in WordPress, it'll say paragraph. If you click on that drop down menu, it will say do you want a headline 2, a headline 3, a headline 4, and the smaller the number, the bigger the headline. And
the good news is when you get in relevant keywords or you get the ideas evolving to the keywords into those H2s, it sort of considers that a little bit more important than if it sees it in text. And so it kind of likes to, it likes to be able to make sure that the content that the title says the page has is in the page, and it is easy for people to find. And that's the reason why they typically say, it's a 1,200 word post, but you're going to have 300 word sections. It can get complicated. I wouldn't worry out so much about those kind of details because Google tends to change those over time, and you'll never catch up to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What is a 500 error?
A 500 error, those are typically temporary. You need to contact your host if you are seeing those over time. But that's someone's trying to get someone on your site and they can't get to it. But it's a server issue, and it's probably just a momentary hiccup. They happen all of the time on the internet. But if you're seeing them consistently on the same pages, try and go to them and see if you can get to them. And if you can't, contact your host.
Okay. And then I don't think you see this a lot with WordPress because it requires you to have a title.
Depends on the theme.
Really?
Make sure your theme insists you have a title, and make sure you have something in the title.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Yeah, because that's really important for search engines.
But it is less common. But there are lots of different kinds of errors. They have a much less of a chance of causing you SEO issues, especially early on. When you get to the point where those are a problem, you should be making money, and you can hire people to help you with specific issues.
Because this is something you do for people now, right? You run these reports for them, and you fix these issues.
Well, I can fix the issues. I don't like fixing the issues. You're going to be charged a lot of money if I fix the issues, but I can make it very easy for you to fix your own issues.
Okay, that's cool. And keep in mind, you can't fix everything. it's just, you can never make Google 100% happy.
And let's say if you got it there tomorrow somehow, Google changes their algorithm multiple times a year, and no one really knows what it is. So if me or someone else ever comes to you and says, this is exactly what you need to do for Google, they're wrong. Unless they're a Google insider who's feeding you the money making stuff for Google, it's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think kind of what I took away from this based on like what you were saying is, there's the 4 major errors that we talked about in the beginning. Those will really create movement in your page speed. And then,
and a lot of those will help clear up some of these other problems too.
Yeah. And then SEO Yoast, which I think most of us kind of think of if this is something you use on your site. If you don't have this on your site, it needs to be on your site.
But you have to use it on your site, but yes.
Right. But you actually have to use it. But SEO Yoast, I think a lot of times we think of it strictly as an SEO fixer, right? Or an SEO helper. And if you haven't used SEO Yoast in a while, it is so much better than it used to be.
And the thing is, once again, there's criticism it's not perfect, which is true. It can't be.
Right, because nobody knows the formula.
But the thing is, it gives you really good ideas on not only how well your content would work with Google, and you don't need perfect posts every time. Your cornerstone posts have to be as close to top green as possible, but the other posts, sometimes you're like, yeah, the keyword's not in the title. It doesn't have to be every time.
But it's going to help you with things like missing description, missing meta tags, missing tags, duplicate titles, missing titles, no H1. It'll tell you like, hey, you don't have H2 tags that have the keyword in them. It makes it
easy to update too, because it'll actually have a piece of code it puts into your SEO title to make sure it's a little bit more SEO appropriate. And it will fix all of your pages automatically. And then it'll allow you to put your description in there. So when someone gets it on a search result, you can know exactly what they're going to see in that text. It might not be exactly what's the first line in there, but it's the first sort of relevant text to what you're searching for. You can make your meta description very easily. You get rid of those missing errors. And, if you have some SEO Yoast will usually fix most of your duplicate title errors as well, just by installing it and activating it.
Yeah. And I think if you have a lot of content and you decide like, you know what, okay, I'm going to make the commitment that I'm going to go through and I'm going to update my site and I'm going to make sure that everything's up to date with SEO Yoast and everything's working okay. Like the thing I would do is maybe like either spend 15 minutes a day and like update like one post a day, or spend maybe like 2 hours a week, and just kind of do whatever you can in that time. It's not something where like, I'm going to drop everything I'm doing and make sure that my website is up to date.
Yeah, especially like if you're going through and trying to update your back post. My bigger suggestion is you worry about your post going forward. Come up with, something to say, okay, these are the things I want to make sure I get done on all my posts going forward. Maybe have at most a time block a week or whatever. Because, it's kind of one of those things like doing accounting. If you have 100, 200 posts, going through and updating all your back posts would be like spending 8 days in QuickBooks straight. It would drive you crazy.
And the thing that I would probably do is I would probably go into like Google Analytics. And I would say, okay, I want a list of all of my pages and how they're performing. And I would start at the worst performing ones and say, is this something that I wish performed better?
Yep.
Do I think this is really good content? And I'd probably start there, and then go through and do whatever I'm going to do. And then maybe run that again the next time I sit down for a time block, just to kind of see like, am I seeing my pages moving?
Yep. And if you want ideas on sort of how to structure like your cornerstone content, or if you can get a SERP report from someone, and if you reply to one of our email newsletters, or my email is in the actual checklist, you can get in contact with me and you can talk to me about getting you. They're pretty low cost for me to generate, but we'll come up with something I could generate. Essentially, we'll call it a spreadsheet that you can go and it will give you like a list of all of your errors, and it'll prioritize all of them, and it will give you clickable links. So you can click on the post where there's a problem, go to it and fix that post. So, if you you can go through like 15 posts, a lot quicker through something like that than going through your website and trying to find it all on every page.
Yeah, absolutely. So so make sure that you go get the priority checklist. It's at smallbizlife.com/bonus. It's only going to be there for a limited time
because it is free.
It's totally free. But basically this is going to be up until we come up with another opt-in. So it could be a month. It could be 2 months.
Up there and it's not there, and it's not there anymore.
Right. So, make sure you go get this as soon as you listen to the episode. Again, smallbizlife.com/bonus. And, if you have any questions about this, feel free to, reach out in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/smallbizlife.
Message our page.
Or you can message the page and we'll be more than happy to help you. So thank you so much and have a great day.
This was Small Biz Life.